There's a very interesting point made by John Hastie, who says, "You're such a leftie, Tim. The Ukraine is fighting its own war, but with our money. The sooner it's over, one way the better. Then we can send their immigrants home. It's true what a lot of the media are saying. Lefties live in their own eccentric world and cannot understand why the whole world does not go along with them. Get out in the world, Tim, and educate yourself." Well, again, another challenge that I feel requires an answer. The argument for supporting Ukraine transcends traditional left-right politics. It transcends that sort of divide, and it rests on principles of international law, human rights, and a commitment to protecting state sovereignty against aggressive violations. And the complexities surrounding Ukraine's position, her situation, particularly with the Russian invasion, highlight fundamental aspects of global justice and security that are more about universal rights than partisan positions. Not only that, but Poland and people like the Polish Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski has made it quite clear that Putin's ambitions go beyond the borders of Ukraine. To understand the context, the broader context, you have to look at the Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances signed in December 1994. And this agreement involved Ukraine, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. So we were party to this memorandum, which was pivotal in ensuring Ukraine's denuclearization after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Key points include Ukraine's nuclear disarmament. Ukraine gave up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, inherited from the Soviet Union's collapse, in exchange for assurances of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And the signing parties, including Russia, pledged to respect Ukraine's independence and sovereignty within its existing borders, to refrain from the threat or use of force against Ukraine, to seek immediate action through the United Nations Security Council if Ukraine became a victim of aggression. And Russia, for its part, pledged to protect and support Ukraine. The Budapest Memorandum didn't create legally binding military commitments akin to those with NATO, but provided political assurances that if violated, it would be considered a serious breach of international trust and agreements. It has been violated by its neighbour, and as we are part of that memorandum, we have a duty, as does the United States, whatever Trump may say, whatever you may say, to support Ukraine. That's the legal position on which nobody seems to talk about, which I find it extraordinary that it goes overlooked. But it needs to be stressed. The 2014 invasion of Crimea, I was in Russia when this happened. And despite these assurances, Russia annexed Crimea, citing historical claims and political upheavals in Kyiv, which it claimed were manufactured by the United States. In a way, it doesn't really matter for the present problem, because this was a previous Kyiv administration which was tarred with corruption. It's one reason why Zelensky came to power. The invasion was justified by the Kremlin through the guise of protecting Russian-speaking populations and responding to the overthrow of the pro-Russian Ukrainian president Viktor Yanukovych. But the action blatantly violated Ukraine's territorial integrity and the spirit of the Budapest Memorandum. We did not respond clearly enough to this invasion. We, Britain, did not respond. We should have done. The world should have responded. It was a violation of sovereignty. The annexation of Crimea contravened international law, specifically the principles outlined in the United Nations Charter to respect national borders. I remember very clearly in my university in Russia how the map on the wall next to the rector's office was suddenly changed, repainted, accommodating Crimea as part of Russia. And Russia used what it called little green men who moved into Crimea under the false pretense of local pro-Russian forces taking control. this had been going on for years, certainly 2 or 3 years, and the Wagner troops were central in stirring up that Russian-speaking area. So the idea that Putin was coming to the aid of Russian speakers, of culturally Russian, indigenous Russian population, is a fantasy. It's a fantasy, and yes, there were paramilitary Ukrainian paramilitaries who went in defense of Ukraine, who tried to fight the Wagner troops and various others. They weren't necessarily nice people, but that doesn't matter. Again, this was a different period. The international community, particularly Western nations, condemned the annexation, but responded mainly with words. There were minor economic sanctions. As I've said many, many times, sanctions don't work. They certainly didn't stop the full-scale invasion in 2021 to 2022 and ongoing. We're coming up to the 1,000th day of invasion. In 2021, Russia began amassing troops along Ukraine's eastern border, leading to heightened concerns over its intentions, with good reason. On February the 24th, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, an aggressive act that escalated into a major international crisis. Russia cited NATO's eastward expansion as a security threat, although Ukraine's NATO membership was neither imminent nor guaranteed. It also talked about the denazification of Ukraine. But although there were, I think there were atrocities and there were Nazi-inspired brigades, the real Nazi element was with the Wagner troops, who were actually named after Hitler's favourite composer, and they bore Nazi insignia on their uniforms. Analysts have described, therefore, this denazification as disinformation, aimed at rallying domestic support and discrediting the Ukraine government. The reality of the invasion was a violation of international law, an invasion that was an outright breach of the UN Charter and the principles of the Budapest Memorandum. It was not only unjustified, but included deliberate targeting of civilian areas. Its use of banned weapons like the thermobaric weapons, the vacuum bombs, its use of banned grenades, drew particular condemnation for their destructive power and potential to cause excessive civilian casualties. More recently, the footage taken by Caelan Robertson showing Russian drones pursuing civilians down the street in Kherson, dropping bombs on them, on their cars. This is horrific. Targeting civilians, not as collateral, not hurt by collateral damage, actively targeting civilians. And the atrocities in Bucha, where mass graves and civilian executions underscore a campaign marked by brutality against non-combatants. This is intimidation. This is the actions of barbarism by Russia. Supporting Ukraine is not a matter of aligning with left-wing or right-wing politics. It's a position based on the defense of sovereignty, upholding the principle that no nation has the right to unilaterally redraw international borders through force. It's about supporting human rights and condemning war crimes that, and acts that violate human dignity and the laws of war, such as the use of prohibited weapons and targeting of civilians. It's about international commitments, reaffirming that agreements like the Budapest Memorandum must be respected to maintain global trust in diplomatic solutions to security concerns. When a sovereign state is subjected to bombardment, violations of its airspace, destruction of civilian infrastructure, the use of weapons like thermobaric bombs, it becomes imperative for the international community to stand in solidarity, not because of political affiliations, but because of shared human values. It's not about being a leftie, which, by the way, I'm not. Butcher and similar atrocities exemplify why supporting Ukraine is about resisting unprovoked aggression and preserving the norms that prevent such acts worldwide. If it happens there, it will happen here. The case for supporting Ukraine is anchored in defending international law, human rights, protecting state sovereignty, protecting the values of civilization. This transcends partisan lines, reflecting a universal commitment to what is right in the global order. Should we be speaking to Putin? Should we be speaking to Russia? Yes! Should we be helping Ukraine? Yes! Have we got it right? No! But we shouldn't be standing on the sidelines carping and then encouraging this blackguard to emerge from his smeg fridge and seize property, seize somebody else's land because he wants it. Because it's part of this image of greater Russia which he's fantasized about in his fridge. This is wrong. This is as bad as Lebensraum. As bad. It transcends partisan lines. We need to prevent invasion, terror, indiscriminate violence as tools of state policy. We need to make it clear that that is wrong.